Hey guys, Thomas the Jr. here, aka Mustached Tom, and welcome to my review of the movie Freaky. If I end up enjoying it, then please consider joining my Patreon page. Any donations are desperately needed. And with that said, let's get into this review. So this is, as the movie clearly states in the poster, from the director of Happy Death Day. That is actually a movie I ended up pretty much enjoying, if I remember my review of it. It's been a while since I've seen it. I know it has a second movie that got a little bit more convoluted in a way. So it's taking that, and it's taking clear two inspirations from Freaky Friday, hence the name of the movie, and Friday the 13th, which would be the date of the movie in which it came out, which is also the name of another movie with Jason. So, this movie starts out with two ladies and two dudes. I don't think that their names are too important, since two of them ended up dying pretty early on. Anyways, he's trying to find this. He ends up coming across this vintage knife, and the guy, who's looking around, finds some vintage beer as well. The lady, named Sandra, but again, not too important to remember these names, but the other guy was Isaac, just so I can get that out there. She's secondly killed after he is killed with the beer bottle that he put down. She's killed by the toilet seat. Otherwise, the other two are having some good old times with the sex. Thus, after she's leaving him, he's killed first, and the killer gives chase to the female, catches up to her, and pins her up to die. And the parents return to see all the death and destruction that has ensued in this house. But the knife had gone missing. We cut to our main character named Millie, and her cop sister named Charlie. She joined up with her pals, whose names I almost didn't get, but I got the first guy early, Josh, the gay guy, and her friend, not her friend, their other friend, Neela, I think her name is Nila? I don't know how to spell that, but she meets her bully, named Ryler, and her crush, named Booker, I think. If I got the names wrong, I do apologize. I only, whatever. Anyway. So, she's sort of the awkward teen who has her two friends, and she's trying to get through high school. So they get this message on their phones, everybody in the school, that this killer got on the loose. So everyone's going, that's weird. But we hard cut to them on the fields, and her as this mascot. So she's doing it up, mascot style, and ends up all alone. And her phone dies. She proceeds to then see the killer, who gives chase. She touches the knife while she is thus stabbed in the shoulder. Or not quite yet, but the sister somehow gets to know her location, ? I guess that phone just had a tracker on it or something, I don't know. The movie doesn't specify, so ? Anyways, after the big stab, the killer wakes up as Millie, and Millie wakes up as the killer. I forget what the killer's name is, so unfortunately I'll just have to keep calling the killer for now, for the whole review. So anyways, the mailman checks in, and the killer, now in Millie's body, uh, you know, and again, vice versa. So Millie's gonna freak people out now that she looks like the killer, but again, it raises another question of how they got his picture in the news or in the, this is your killer, this is what he looks like, if he was masked in the beginning of the movie. Again, there are a few conveniences at the beginning of the movie to move the plot along. I do think that you could have had a little bit more to show why these things are explained, and it would have taken up too much time. So anyways, the killer, now wearing Millie's body, wants to take Ryler in a situation in a spot that is privated away. Ryler thinks that she's putting the moves on her, and she's like, oh, it's okay if you're a lesbian, but she's like texting like, haha, got him. But she ends up in a freezer thing, and the temperature gets put down on the big bad bully, and she gets frozen to death. Millie, in the killer's body, finds the body, and Nilla and Josh, they end up seeing Mel as the killer body, and they're freaking out. So she tries to go over all of her favorite stuff to show that she is indeed her, and they ended up eventually believing in her. And they end up finding the MacGuffin dagger, the Leidola dagger, I believe they call it. Meanwhile, Mel, or the killer I should say, gets some other revenges. This time going after the wood instructor that gave her all that grief. She ends up killing him with a screwdriver and then cutting him in two. Meanwhile, since the killer is in Millie's body, he ends up faking out the cops. And all that while, we cut back to Millie, as in the killer's body, is in this little clothing shop where the mom is talking about her dad to, the mom's talking about that situation. Dad had passed away, and she gets to learn more about how that felt. Meanwhile, the killer is meeting up with some jocks to get to a location to do some more murder. But her crush, Booker, is looking for Millie. So Millie knocks out, or the killer knocks, sorry. I'm getting the names mixed up because the body switch. Millie, yes, indeed, as the killer, knocks out Booker to try to help him out from stopping to freak out, and goes over this poem that she had wrote for him, and that is what gets him to also join in their little group as well. So Mel, while they're in the car, just her and her crush, talk about how she feels while in this killer's big manly body, how she feels more empowered, and her crush says that really comes from the head and the heart, not so much the body. Meanwhile, Josh comes out as they had captured the killer in Millie's body. They brought her to Josh's place, which I completely neglected to mention. So his mom returns, and she's like, "What's going on over here?" So Josh comes out as straight, which, is a little bit funny to do the reverse, I guess. But the mom definitely already knows that the truth, but, the killer gets loose nonetheless. So, nonetheless, I went a bit far in my notes there. Sorry. So, the killer gets loose. Meanwhile, at the police station, the sister of Millie, I forgot her name, I just wrote the cop sister at that point, stops Neela, the one who's trying to get the key, the weapon. Meanwhile, Mel and Booker are talking a bit more, and they share a short kiss, so Booker is kissing the guy, technically, which is weird, but whatever. So anyways, the sister arrests Millie because she looks like the killer. And meanwhile, the killer has arrived at the big old party and is ready to strike. So she goes with all the jocks. And when she's alone, she attacks and chainsaws the last of them. But the cops also arrive there as well. This other jock confronts Josh, kissing him, confessing the secret love, or the secret, gayness, I suppose. But he is killed off, which I found the most odd kill in the movie, because earlier Josh had made the very obvious remark with him and Neela being a black character and him being a gay character. He made the remark that since they are of those things, that they would die early, or they would indeed die, that they would be more likely to die because she is black and because he is gay. But the movie itself kills this in-closet gay jock, though, so they kept up the stereotype while trying to tell a commentary about how black people always die first in horror movies. I should have looked this up because I remember of a movie. I don't remember what it's called, unfortunately, where a black character survives the horror movie. Like, he's the main character. I would also like to point out that there is a movie, a zombie movie, again, I wish I had looked this up before the review, of this gay couple who survive a zombie apocalypse, essentially. So I like to point out that there are movies out there, horror movies on top of that, that do break the stereotype. So I do find it odd that they would remark about it, but then reverse Uno into killing a gay character. Again, a little odd that they would make the remark and then do the thing that they said they wouldn't do, quote unquote. It's just a weird thing to do, to say and then do the reverse, the inverse, I suppose. Anyway, that aside, so the cops fire off because they're trying to clear the area, and Millie and the killer find each other, and they start to once again fight each other. Neela helps out with the tackle, but they see that they ran out of time according to the watch that she was given. However, one of them remarks, I forget who, that the last bell didn't ring, so it's not completely midnight yet. So Millie goes for the stab, and they, go, ugh, and then they remark about how Millie is in her own body, and the killer is now in his own body. And the cops arrive, so they tell him to shoot down the killer in the killer's body. Meanwhile, after the events cool down, Millie meets with Booker, and they get their little kiss uh, makeup, and she meets and reunites with her family. However, the movie's not quite over, as the killer had survived the gunshots. We see that he is faked or somehow surmised that to fake out his death to do a certain thing, whatever. Anyway, Millie, on her own, is like looking around her house, seeing that the atmosphere is suspiciously suspicious. So she's looking around and she says the cliche line of "hello" in the horror movie of all things. And the killer stops her, attacking her. But the mom and the sister join in on the attack. They get pushed around a bit, but after getting almost, attacked, when the killer remains standing, Millie, knowing, obvious weak spot right in the nuts of the killer, to distract him long enough to stand up, join the sister and mom in a secondary attack, and stabbing him in the chest with a plank, like a broken plank of wood or whatever it was, and killing him to death. He dies, they hug, she says some sort of one-liner that's a reference to something else in the movie, but I completely forget what it is, and that's the end of the movie Freaky. For the most part, I think this movie's okay. I think I ended up enjoying Happy Death Day a little bit more in terms of a character, like, developing as a character, and the horror aspect being done a bit more solidly there. I would say that, the switch and the moments that are nice, they are present. The one that I can think of when they're in the shopping area, those are nice for Millie to be in that atmosphere, for that to take place. And for vice versa, the killer, as Millie, gets to take out essentially all the people that have griefed Millie. So it's sort of like Millie's sort of getting revenge on all of those people incidentally along the way. So yeah, everything ends up working out. None of the main characters end up dying, but the commentary bit was a little bit odd, since they ended up doing the reverse of what they said they were going to quote-unquote not do. But that's, I'm not one to say that, like, cliches or, like, stereotypes or whatever. It's a tough thing to sort of tackle, I suppose. Again, I can think of two movies, and which again, I did the research. I would definitely look up the movies, because I definitely know that they exist out there somewhere. And I'm pretty sure there might be other movies that I'm just not privy to that, that are more diverse. But, it's a tough balancing act, I also feel, because a part of me also feels like in a horror movie where people generally tend to die more often, that in an even playing field, anybody should be up for death, if that makes sense. I feel like you have to equal it out in that sort of sense of, everyone has a chance to die. No one is immune to death, is what I'm trying to say. I can't even say outside of the main character, because there are horror movies where every character dies, so I can't even say that. That is not necessarily a rule. So I don't feel like, certain ethnicities should be immune to death because it's a horror movie. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that makes any sense in the genre of horror. Uh, you know, but I also have an understanding on the opposite side to play both sides of that. That there are a lot of movies where that uh, negative connotation comes from of like, oh, the black character always dies first. You know, there are quite a few movies that probably you could probably list them off. I probably can't even think of all of them. In that case, so it's a weird balancing act of like, what do you actually do? I don't know. Uh, but I think this movie tried to have its fun. Uh, try to have a little bit more of a character moment like Happy Death Day. Though again, as I would mention, I do think Happy Death Day was a bit more solid in how it told everything. Um, but I do think that this movie is okay. Again, there are some plot conveniences earlier in the movie that allow it to happen in the way that it does. And again, as I mentioned, there are some things that they could have just added a few short scenes that could have added to uh, explain those little discrepancies. So I would give this movie a 6 out of 10. I think it's almost pretty damn solid. Almost a 7 out of 10, if you will. Um, uh, and those discrepancies I feel like would have helped. And then just making, if you're gonna do the whole message thing, if you're gonna have the joke of like, or you gotta make the commentary, then fit the commentary. I feel like if you are going to do it, then at least stick to what you're saying. Uh, because doing the reverse makes the commentary very confusing. It makes it very, very confusing. I'm like, so what were you trying? Anyway, so 6 out of 10, pretty good. And that's my review of the movie Freaky. If you ended up enjoying this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my Discord server. The second will lead you to my Patreon page. Any donations are desperately needed. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.